5 years after my husband's death, I thought I'd finally moved on, until a stranger mailed me something that changed everything I believed about him. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. My name is Claire Richardson, and until a few months ago, my life in Savannah, Georgia was calm and ordinary. I just retired from teaching after 30 years, hoping to spend quiet mornings tending my garden, reading old novels, and occasionally visiting my son Ethan and his wife Maya. We weren't a perfect family, but we were close enough. Or at least I believed we were. It all began one rainy afternoon when I found an envelope slipped under my door. There was no return address, just my name written in hurried handwriting. Inside was a folded sheet of paper, yellowed at the edges, with only a few words. Kyle, you don't know what really happened to Daniel. Daniel, my late husband. He'd passed away 5 years ago in what everyone said was a heart attack. I'd accepted it, I mourned, I moved on, or at least I tried to. But now, seeing those words, something in me twisted. My hands trembled as I read the line over and over, searching for a clue. At first I thought it was some cruel joke, but then I noticed a faint watermark on the bottom of the paper. Savannah Regional Medical. That was the same hospital where Daniel had been taken the night he died. My chest tightened. Why would anyone send me this now? I folded the letter and placed it inside a drawer, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone wanted me to find it. The next day, I drove to the hospital. I told the receptionist I needed access to my husband's old medical records. She gave me a polite but firm smile. I'm sorry, ma'am. Those files are confidential and archived. Only authorized family members can request them. I am his family, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Oh? She hesitated, then lowered her tone. Then you'll need a signed authorization or a court order. That night, I couldn't sleep. The sound of the rain outside reminded me of the night Daniel died. I started recalling strange things. How Ethan had been distant that week. How Maya kept avoiding my calls. And how the doctor refused to answer a few of my questions back then. Something wasn't right. The next morning, I found another envelope waiting on my doorstep. This time, no note. Just a single photograph. It was blurry, but I could recognize Daniel's face. And next to him, a man I didn't know, handing him what looked like a brown envelope. That was the moment I realized this wasn't a prank. Someone wanted me to uncover something buried deep, something that could destroy the peace I thought I had left. I must have stared at that photograph for an hour. Daniel's expression was uneasy, his shoulders tense, his eyes fixed on the man beside him. The stranger's face was half hidden in shadow, but one detail stood out, a small scar running from his jawline to his ear. I didn't recognize him, but something about that scar felt familiar, like I'd seen it before. I turned the photo over. On the back, written in faint ink, were the words, "Ito, ask your son about the man with the scar." My stomach sank. Why would Ethan, my own son, be connected to this? I wanted to dismiss it, to believe this was some twisted hoax, but the doubt had already taken root. That evening I drove to Ethan and Maya's house. Their neighborhood looked picture perfect, with trimmed lawns and porch lights glowing softly in the autumn air, and walked a fop in the door. When Ethan opened the door, he looked surprised to see me. "Mom, you didn't call." Hissing probeerde first after Reese. "I needed to talk to you," I said, clutching the photograph in my bag. Inside, Maya was arranging dinner plates, her smile polite but distant. Ever since Daniel's funeral, she'd grown colder toward me. There was always something calculated in her tone, as if she were waiting for me to say the wrong thing. We sat at the table, and I decided not to waste time. "Ethan," I began, "do you remember the night your father died?" He froze, his fork midway to his mouth. "Of course I do. Why are you asking?" "I found something," I said carefully. "A letter and a photograph. Someone's trying to tell me that your father's death wasn't natural." Maya's eyes darted to Ethan's, a flicker of panic flashing between them. "That's ridiculous," she said quickly. "Daniel had a heart condition. Everyone knows that." I reached into my bag and placed the photo on the table. Ethan stared at it, his face draining of color. "Who's that man?" I asked. "Yay." He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Finally, he muttered, I don't know." "You're lying," I whispered. "I can see it." Maya slammed her hand on the table. "Enough, Claire. You're upsetting him." Something in her voice, sharp, defensive, made me realize she wasn't just protecting Ethan. She was protecting herself. I stood up, trembling but firm. "If you two know something, tell me now. I've lived too long with half-truths." Ethan looked at Maya, then at me. His lips quivered as if he wanted to speak, but she shot him a warning glare. That was all I needed to see. There was something they weren't telling me, something they'd both sworn to hide. As I left their house that night, the wind picked up, scattering leaves across the driveway. I looked back once more, and there, across the street, a car idled in the shadows. "'Kay?" The driver's window rolled down, just enough for me to glimpse a scar running down a man's cheek. For a moment I couldn't move. The man's eyes met mine through the car window, dark and unreadable. That same jagged scar glistened in the faint light from the street lamp. My breath caught. He wasn't just a face in an old photograph. He was real. And he was watching me. Then, as if realizing I'd seen him, the car's engine roared and it sped off down the street. I ran forward, but by the time I reached the corner, it had vanished into the night. I stood there for a while, trembling in the cold. Whoever sent those letters and photos wasn't done with me. And if that man was involved, then Daniel's death was more than a family tragedy. It was a secret someone was desperate to keep buried. The next morning, I went to Savannah Regional Hospital again, determined not to leave empty-handed. This time, I spoke to an older nurse named Carla, who had worked there for decades. "Yo, please," I said quietly. "My husband died here 5 years ago. Something about it doesn't make sense. I just need to know who signed off his final medical report." Carla hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Give me his name." When she came back, her face looked pale. "It says here the attending physician was Dr. Alan Mercer, for us to say chef at the Trepaspish." "Alan Mercer? Mercer?" I repeated. "I don't remember that name. That's strange," Carla said, lowering her voice. "Dr. Mercer resigned the day after your husband passed. No forwarding address, no record of him since." A chill ran through me. "Do you have a picture of him?" She shook her head. "No picture, but I remember something. A scar right here." She pointed to her cheek. My knees nearly gave out. Nay. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the car, the scar, and that fake doctor. I took out the photo again, zooming in on the man's hand. The envelope he was giving Daniel had a faint stamp on it. Redstone Bank. I hadn't heard that name in years. It was a small local bank that went under not long after Daniel's death. I drove there the next morning, hoping for answers. The building was boarded up, but a sign on the side said property managed by Vance Realty. And inside the realty office, a woman greeted me warmly. "Looking for a property?" "Actually," I said carefully, "I'm trying to find old records from Redstone Bank. My husband once had an account there." She frowned. "We only handled their foreclosures. You'd have to ask their former manager, Mr. Ethan Richardson." I froze. "Yent, did you say Ethan Richardson?" "Yes," she said cheerfully. "Nice young man. Works in finance now, right here in town." I managed a weak smile and thanked her, but as I walked out, my pulse was racing. My son hadn't just known the man in the photo. He'd worked with him. By the time I got home, my hands were shaking so hard I could barely fit the key into the lock. My own son, Ethan, had worked with the same man who'd handed Daniel that envelope. I didn't want to believe it. Ethan was many things. Stubborn, secretive, easily influenced by Maya, but he wasn't cruel. At least I hoped he wasn't. I paced the living room, my thoughts spiraling the photo. The car, the letter, everything pointed to one truth. Ethan knew more about Daniel's death than he ever admitted. Kim. The next day, I drove to Ethan's office under the pretense of dropping off some homemade food. The receptionist greeted me kindly, though I could tell she found my visit odd. "He's in a meeting," she said. "Would you like to wait?" "Oh, yes, please," I replied, settling into a chair near the frosted glass door of the conference room. Through the glass, I saw Ethan sitting at the table with another man. Tall, broad shoulders, and a faint scar glinting under the fluorescent lights. My heart stopped. It was him. The stranger from the photo. I stood abruptly, knocking over my purse. Papers scattered everywhere, but I didn't care. The receptionist rushed to help, but I muttered, "I'm fine," and hurried out before Ethan could see me. Come. Outside, I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The stranger wasn't just from the past. He was still part of Ethan's present. That night, I called Ethan. My voice trembled, but I kept it calm. "I dropped by your office today," I said softly. "You what?" His voice tightened immediately. "I saw you. You weren't alone." There was a long silence. Then he sighed. "But, Mom, that man, his name's Alex. He's someone Dad used to work with? At the bank?" "Yes," he admitted reluctantly. "They were trying to start an investment fund before Dad passed. After his death, Alex reached out to me. He said there were unresolved matters, and I wanted to help finish what Dad started." "Ethan," I whispered, "what kind of matters?" "Cow." He hesitated again, then said, "Money that wasn't supposed to exist. Accounts in Dad's name that don't match any of his records." My stomach dropped. "You mean hidden money?" "I don't know," he said. "Alex told me it was all legal, just business transfers. But lately, I've been getting messages too. Someone doesn't want this reopened." Kenk. A knock echoed on Ethan's end of the call, and his tone shifted to panic. "Mom, I have to go. Please don't come to my office again. It's not safe, not safe," I repeated. "Ethan, what have you gotten yourself into?" But the line went dead. For the first time since Daniel's death, I felt genuine fear. Not of the truth, but of what might happen if I actually found it. Sleep wouldn't come that night. Sleep wouldn't come that night. I kept hearing Ethan's words echoing in my head. "It's not safe." What could be so dangerous about bank accounts and old transfers? Unless Daniel's death was never about illness at all. Cow. I sat in my dimly lit kitchen, sipping cold coffee, the photo still lying on the table. That brown envelope Daniel received from the scarred man, Alex, suddenly made sense. It must have contained documents, something valuable enough to hide or kill for. And determined to uncover the truth, I turned to an old friend, Detective Mark Ellison, a retired officer who'd helped with neighborhood watch events back when I still taught school. When I showed him the photo and told him everything, he frowned deeply. "Claire, you're treading dangerous ground. If what you're saying is true, you're dealing with money laundering. Or worse." I don't care," I said quietly. "My husband's death deserves the truth." Mark leaned back in his chair. "All right, let's start with the bank. Redstone folded because of internal fraud. If Daniel was tied to that, someone might have silenced him to keep things quiet. Then why go after Ethan?" I asked. "Loose ends," Mark muttered. "Someone probably thinks he has the missing piece." That evening, while Ethan ignored my calls, I decided to visit Maya instead. She opened the door in her robe, looking irritated. "Claire, it's late, I know. But I need to ask you something," she sighed, crossing her arms. "This again? Why didn't you tell me Ethan was working with Alex, the man connected to Daniel?" Her expression flickered. "I didn't think it mattered, didn't matter," I snapped. "My husband is dead, and your husband might be next." Maya's lips tightened. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. Then help me understand," I pleaded. "Who is Alex really?" She hesitated, glancing toward the hallway. "He's not just some business partner. He's Daniel's former accountant. The one who helped move the money? Move it where? Offshore, she whispered. Daniel discovered something illegal and wanted out, but Alex wouldn't let him. When Daniel threatened to expose it, she stopped herself, eyes wide. What, Maya? I pressed. She shook her head, whispering, You should have never reopened this, Claire. They're watching again. They never stopped. And before I could ask more, her phone buzzed. She looked down, went pale, and shoved it into her pocket. You need to leave, Maya. What's going on? She forced a trembling smile. Just go home. Please. I stepped back, my heart pounding. As I turned to leave, I saw her pull the curtains shut and lock the door behind me. Driving home, I kept glancing in my rearview mirror. Every shadow looked like a car following me. And when I pulled into my driveway, there it was again. A black sedan parked across the street. Engine running. Someone was making sure I didn't stop digging. The next morning I called Mark before sunrise. My voice was shaky but determined. They're following me, Mark. I saw a car outside my house all night. Stay inside and keep your doors locked, he said firmly. I'll be there in 20 minutes. When he arrived, he brought coffee, a laptop, and a heavy folder of documents. I did some digging, he said, laying everything on my table. Your husband's name appears in several financial records tied to Redstone Bank, mostly shell accounts. But here's what's strange. After his death, those same accounts were accessed again under a new authorization. I leaned forward. By who? He met my eyes. Ethan Richardson. My chest tightened. No, that can't be right. Ethan wouldn't steal from his own father. Maybe not intentionally, Mark said softly. But someone could have convinced him it was legitimate. My guess? Alex fed him a story that Daniel left unfinished business. It's a classic setup. They use the family's trust to reopen old money trails. I buried my face in my hands. Ethan's voice echoed in my mind. It's not safe. He'd been terrified, and now I understood why. Mark continued, There's more. Maya's name shows up too. She wired funds overseas 6 months ago, money linked to one of those same shell accounts. I looked up sharply. Maya, are you sure? He nodded grimly. I traced the transfer myself. I felt the ground slipping beneath me. My son and daughter-in-law, both tied to the same dirty money. Daniel died, trying to expose. Enkel. That evening, Mark insisted we visit Maya together. When we arrived, her car was gone, but the front door was slightly ajar. Inside, the living room was dark. Too quiet, Maya? I called out softly. Then I saw it. Papers scattered across the floor, the same ones from the old bank. The coffee table had been overturned, and there were muddy footprints leading toward the back door. Mark motioned for me to stay back as he stepped outside. He returned moments later, his face grave. She's gone, looks like she left in a hurry. I spotted something glinting under the sofa. It was a flash drive. I picked it up, heart pounding. On its side was written one word, Daniel. K. We drove back to my house and plugged it into Mark's laptop. Inside were scanned documents, bank statements, and one video file. The date stamp read, 2 days before Daniel's death. Mark opened the video. The screen flickered. Then Daniel's face appeared. His expression was tense, his voice low but urgent. If you're watching this, something's happened to me. Alex isn't who he says he is. He's working with someone close to me. Someone I trusted. Don't believe anything they tell you. The screen went black. I stared at the laptop, my pulse hammering. Daniel had known in the person he warned about, someone close, could only mean one thing. It wasn't Alex alone. Someone in my family had helped him. The silence after that video ended was deafening. I just sat there, staring at the frozen frame of Daniel's face on the laptop screen. His eyes filled with fear and regret. Mark finally spoke. He knew he was trying to leave, but someone made sure he couldn't. I swallowed hard. He said someone close, that means family. Mark nodded slowly. You said Daniel and Ethan had been arguing a lot before his death, right? Yes, I whispered. About money. Daniel wanted Ethan to quit his job at Redstone, said it wasn't an honest company. But Ethan refused. He said he had to prove himself. He wanted to make enough to give Maya the life she deserved. Mark's expression darkened. That's all Alex needed. Ambition mixed with desperation. He probably promised Ethan a shortcut, and when Daniel found out, he threatened to expose them. I rubbed my temples. So Daniel was silenced, and Ethan, maybe without even realizing, helped cover it up? Maybe, Mark said carefully. Or maybe Ethan figured it out too late and Alex's threats kept him quiet. I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe that. But the thought that my son might have been involved in his father's death, even by accident, made my heart ache in ways I didn't know it could. Keck. Mark loaded more files from the flash drive. There's one more folder, he murmured. It's encrypted. He typed for several minutes before the files opened. Mails. Dated a week before Daniel died. The sender's name made my blood run cold. Maya Richardson, Allen. He's planning to go to the authorities. You need to handle it before he ruins everything, Allen. Not Alex, Alan Mercer. The fake doctor from the hospital. Mark looked up at me. That's our scarred man. Alex was an alias. Alan Mercer faked Daniel's death report to make it look like a heart attack. And Maya helped him, I whispered, my voice breaking. I stood up, pacing the room, anger and grief clashing in my chest. She was married to my son, Mark. How could she do this to her own family? And she probably planned. She probably didn't plan for it to go this far, Mark said. But once Daniel was gone, she had to keep it buried to protect herself. And Ethan, I clenched my fists. Then she'll protect herself again. She'll protect herself again. I saw it in her eyes last night. She knows someone's closing in. Mark sighed. We need to find her before Alan does. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. A woman's shaky voice came through. Claire. It's me. Maya? Maya? Where are you? I can't say. But I found something. Proof Daniel didn't die the way we thought. Meet me tonight at the old pier. Come alone. The line went dead. Mark looked at me, his expression grim. You're not going alone. The night air was thick with fog as I drove toward the old Savannah pier. Headlights cutting through the mist like narrow blades. My heart pounded with every mile. Maya's voice still echoed in my ears. Come alone. Mark had insisted on following from a distance. If this is a setup, he warned, I'm not letting you walk into it blind. The pier was deserted, its wooden boards creaking under my steps. Streetlights flickered weakly, casting long, trembling shadows over the water. I saw her then, Maya, standing near the end of the dock, clutching a small bag against her chest. Maya! I called softly. She turned, her face pale, red from crying. Abashur softly. I called. She turned, her eyes red from crying. Claire, she whispered, thank you for coming. I approached cautiously. You said you had proof. She nodded and opened the bag, pulling out a small envelope. These are Daniel's original test results, the ones Alan replaced. He didn't die of a heart attack, Claire. He was poisoned. My stomach twisted. Mayama mer besetamal. He was poisoned. My stomach twisted. Poisoned? My God, Maya's hands trembled. I didn't know that night what Alan was planning. He said Daniel was going to expose us all, that we'd lose everything. I thought he just wanted to scare him. Make him back off? And Ethan? I asked. Did he know? Tears filled her eyes. Not then. Alan told him later that Daniel's death was an accident. He made Ethan believe he was helping clean up his father's mess. I wanted to feel sympathy, but all I felt was anger. You let me live for 5 years thinking it was natural causes. I was scared, she said, voice breaking. Alan threatened me. Threatened Ethan. But he's losing control now. He wants the rest of the money, and when Ethan refused to transfer it, he came after me. And where is Ethan now? I demanded. Before she could answer, footsteps echoed behind us. I spun around, and there he was. Alan Mercer, the scar-faced man, stepping out of the fog like a ghost. "Okay. Well," he said, voice low and cold. "It seems family secrets don't stay buried forever," Maya gasped. "Alan, please, don't," he smirked. "You talk too much, Maya. And Claire, you should have stopped digging." Yeah. I stepped back, my pulse racing. "You killed my husband," I said, "and you used my family to hide it." Gan. Alan pulled a gun from his coat, pointing it at me. Daniel was weak. He wanted to turn himself in. You can't build a future on weakness. Suddenly, headlights flared behind him. Mark's car. "Police! Drop it!" he shouted, aiming his weapon. Alan turned, startled, and Maya lunged forward, pushing him. The gun went off. The sound cracked through the night like thunder. Alan stumbled backward, his body hitting the edge of the pier, then disappeared into the dark water below. Maya collapsed, crying, clutching her arm. I dropped beside her as Mark ran over. The air reeked of salt and gunpowder. It was over. Or so I thought. The sirens came fast, red and blue lights splashing across the water. Duh! As officers pulled Alan Mercer's lifeless body from the river. The fog began to lift, but the weight in my chest didn't. I sat beside Maya, clutching her shaking hand while paramedics wrapped her arm. She looked hollow, like someone who had finally run out of lies. Mark stood over us, speaking quietly into his radio. "Suspect down, 2 witnesses on scene. Send a unit for evidence recovery." Then he crouched beside me. "It's over, Claire. You're safe now." But I wasn't sure safe was the right word. Because even as Alan's story ended, Ethan's hadn't. At the hospital later that night, Maya finally told the full truth. "Alan blackmailed Ethan," she whispered, eyes swollen from crying. "After Daniel's death, Alan showed him fake documents, made him believe your husband had hidden millions illegally. He told Ethan that unless he moved the remaining funds overseas, he'd go to prison for fraud." "Okay, so Ethan did what he thought he had to," I murmured. She nodded weakly. "He thought he was protecting his father's name. But once the money moved, Alan kept demanding more. When Ethan tried to stop, Alan threatened him, threatened me." Mark exhaled slowly. "We'll corroborate it all. There'll be an investigation, but Ethan's not the criminal here. He's another victim." Ken? When Ethan finally arrived at the hospital, his face looked years older. He walked straight to me, tears in his eyes. "Mom, I'm sorry," he said, voice breaking. "I didn't know what was real anymore. Alan made it all sound like I was fixing Dad's mistakes." "Kang," I pulled him into my arms. "You made mistakes, Ethan, but you didn't kill your father. You were used, just like the rest of us." For the first time in years, he let himself cry, not as a man burdened by guilt, but as my son again. In the weeks that followed, the truth unraveled fully. The police confirmed Daniel's poisoning and Alan's role in a long-running financial fraud that had claimed multiple victims. Kissed. Maya cooperated with authorities, handing over every file she had. She faced charges, but the court recognized her cooperation and fear-driven involvement. Kanang. When the trial ended, I stood outside the courthouse watching the clouds scatter, sunlight breaking through for the first time in what felt like forever. Mark joined me, coffee in hand. "You did it," he said with a faint smile. "Daniel would be proud." I looked out toward the harbor, where the waves shimmered gold. "He didn't deserve what happened. None of us did. But at least the truth finally found its way home," Mark nodded. "That's what the truth does, Claire. It always surfaces, just like the tide that night I returned home." I placed Daniel's photo on the mantel beside a single candle and whispered, "It's over now." The flame flickered gently, reflected in the glass, and for the first time in 5 years, my house felt like it was breathing again.